So this was much later than I expected. I'm sorry, but now I'm back. So Wonder Woman 1984 came out and it was not great. Wonder Woman 1984 takes place in 1984 and Diana has to stop an oil tycoon from destroying the world with his wishing powers or something, and Cheetah's there. Also, I'm not doing my typical give some thoughts and again spoilers. This video will be filled. Spoilers, I'm doing that because everyone can watch it at home for now, and I'm pretty sure all of you have seen it anyway. So I said I was going to get this out in January after I watched it again, but due to Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires, and just not wanting to in general, I suddenly realized I was 8 days into January and that I had to watch it. And now we're 2 weeks into January. Sorry. So I saw this movie on Christmas Day when it came to HBO Max, and I enjoyed it, but I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. But after hearing others' criticisms and watching it again, I must say, Wonder Woman 1984 is not very good. Now, I do enjoy the first Wonder Woman from 2017 quite a bit. I rewatched it on Christmas Eve, and I still think it's the first really good DCU movie, so I was looking forward to this. On my first viewing, I was enjoying it more than the first, but then it started to lose me in the last 50 or so minutes, and I wasn't sure why, so I didn't want to review this after first viewing. So let's start with some good things first. For a movie that's 2.5 hours long, it didn't quite feel like that to me. The chemistry between Steve and Diana was good, even though I don't care for what they did with Steve, but I'll get to that later. I liked the scene of Steve and Diana flying through the fireworks. I liked the whole 80s look to the movie. From what I've heard, it's very accurate. The cameo at the end was kind of cool. It gave us this meme. There's not a lot I liked about this movie, to be honest. This is definitely one of the weaker DCU movies, and that's coming from a franchise with like 2 actually really good movies. There's a lot wrong with this movie that I don't really know where to start with. I'll just start at the beginning. The movie starts with a young Diana competing in these Amazon Olympics, and she does better than everyone, even though the first movie shows she was training to be a good warrior until she was an adult. However, she takes a shortcut to the finish line, and when she almost wins, she stopped and told she can't cheat or take shortcuts to get what she wants, and that she can't lie to be a hero. This doesn't really add much to anything, and the only reasons I can think for it to exist are to set up the golden armor that Diana wears later in the movie, to set up the post-credit scene, because Robin Wright and Connie Nielsen have contracts. But in all seriousness, the only reasons I could think of are Diana cheating death, I guess, to bring Steve back, and Barbara wishing she could be stronger. That's all I can think of. This scene takes forever to get through, by the way. And after that, we have Diana stopping this jewelry store heist in a mall that exists to set up the plot device, the magic rock that grants wishes. Basically, you tell this rock what you wish, but there's a price for it, so it's kind of like the monkey's paw, but revoking your wish is easy, but I'll get to that later. Oh, and the FBI gave this rock to the museum that Barbara and Diana are working at, but I guess they don't really care what they do with it because Barbara just gives it to Maxwell Lord because she's horny, then he uses it to become the stone himself, which is basically wishing for infinite wishes, I guess. Also, Steve comes back because Diana mentally wished for him to come back, and he just shows up at the party that Diana's at out of nowhere because the plot needs him to. And he's in just some guy's body, but only Diana can see Chris Pine. I will say that I'm glad they have an explanation for why he's back and he's not just unexplained. And they have sex at this guy's apartment, which is basically rape, I guess. This reminds me of Being John Malkovich, but if it sucked. Also, does this guy have anyone who cares about him? Friends, family, a girlfriend, kids, a job, or anything? Not once is this ever addressed. And they have the scene where he's trying on clothes, which I'll admit was kind of funny, but they do the scene probably because of the scene in the first Wonder Woman where she tries on clothes, but that scene is supposed to show the contrast between Diana's warrior upbringing and the more conservative World War I era England. But here they just want the funny comic book movie scene. And then they go out and have this whole fish out of water scene with Steve and Diana. But if Steve had to go out and find Diana, then he's likely seen a lot of what the 80s had to offer, so he shouldn't have been surprised by a trash can. And I just have to ask, what if Steve ended up in the body of a child, or a really old man, or some guy on the other side of the world, what would have happened then? And I mentioned that he just shows up out of nowhere, which is something that happens quite a few times in the movie. Steve just shows up at the party. In one scene, Barbara gets harassed by some guy in the park, then Diana just shows up. And then later, Barbara runs into the same guy again. During the scene at the White House, Barbara just shows up. And at the end of the movie, Max's son just shows up in front of him, but I'll get to that one later. There's one part where Steve and Diana go to Cairo to confront Max to get the stone back from him. And to get there, they have to take a plane from the Smithsonian. And apparently this place keeps its display planes fully fueled and ready for flight. But then Diana remembers about radar right when they're about to take off. And she turns the plane invisible to get past the radar. But would that even work? I don't know anything about radar, but surely there's other ways the plane can be spotted regardless if it's visible or not. Then they fly in some fireworks, and I'll admit, I like this part. Then they get to Cairo, and just happen to pass Maxwell while driving. And this leads to a mildly entertaining action scene on these armored convoy vehicles. And there are these kids who's playing in the road and don't bother to move until Diana moves them. And Diana's getting weaker because of her wish to bring Steve back. So Max is back in Washington, D.C., and he's using his powers to grant people's wishes. And this is making him weak. And then he goes to the White House and manipulates the president into letting him use the Star Wars project thing, or whatever it was called, to broadcast himself on every TV in the world. Then Steve and Diana go to the White House to confront Maxwell. And then Barbara just shows up and fights Diana. Then Maxwell and Barbara leave. Barbara then gets a second wish, I'll get to that later. And says she wants to be an apex predator and to be something the world's never seen. Max then heads to the satellite station and broadcasts his message on every single TV in the world, telling people to make a wish. Everyone does, but then of course the world starts to go to shit and Diana has to stop him. Here's some issues with this scene. Literally everyone in the world makes a wish, and apparently everyone on Earth can understand them just fine without subtitles, even though the majority of people on Earth don't speak English. Also, I find it weird that no one asks for world peace or infinite wishes or anything like that. And this raises some questions about the stone I'll get to later. With everything going on, Steve and Diana realize that Diana needs to revoke her wish to get her powers back. So Diana revokes her wish and Steve essentially becomes an afterthought. So I guess the guy whose body Steve's been inhabiting just wakes up in the middle of all this. Diana then learns she can fly, even though she never does that in the DCU movies that take place after this. Maybe she forgot. So anyway, she shows up to the satellite station and meets, oh my god!
What the fuck is that?
What the hell is that? She looks like one of the extras from Cats. Which I guess is why this scene's lighting is so bad, because they want to hide this as much as they could. Also, she just shows up like this. We don't get a transformation or anything. We don't even know if this is what she wanted. She just says she wanted to be an apex predator without giving any details. This thing is an apex predator. What if she turned into that? I guess DC's trying to appeal to the furries now. So then they get into a cat fight.
Cat fight?
Which is one of the lamest and ugliest fight scenes ever, by the way. Diana wins, of course, and goes to confront Max. I love how they were building up this armor, and its only fight scene is the ugliest in the whole movie. So then Max stops her by making it very windy, even though she can take a headbutt from Superman. So she throws the lasso around his ankle and tells everyone to revoke their wish, and they do. I don't know about you, but I'm having trouble believing that everyone on Earth revoked their wish. This movie's message is be careful what you wish for, but revoking your wish is this easy. Max and Barbara realized the error of their ways and moved on like nothing happened. And then it's Christmas time and they pull the stupid Hallmark thing with Diana and the guy she raped, and then the movie ends. Actually, no, we get a credit scene with Linda Carter as Asteria. You know, the woman who originally had the golden armor. And that's when the movie ends. The movie's over, but we're still not done. There's a few things I want to talk about. Let's talk about this magic wishing stone and why it makes no sense. As I said earlier, it's like the monkey's paw where you make a wish, but you have to pay a price for it. For example, Diana loses her powers after wishing for Steve back, and Barbara loses her humanity when she wishes to be like Diana. What's confusing is how the stone works. For a while, it seems like you're only granted one wish, and then Barbara gets a second wish. For most of the movie, you have to either be touching the stone or Max has to touch you. But then he broadcasts himself to the entire world and everyone starts making wishes. Sometimes you're under his spell, sometimes you can just talk back to Max. Some of these wishes have real world consequences, like the wall in Cairo, while other times you get some weird variant of what you asked for, like Barbara becoming Cheetah. And speaking of the real world consequences, some of these are pretty major, like a literal wall forming around Cairo, and most people just kind of go on with their day. And a lot of these events, like Max's broadcast and all the chaos from that, is just never brought up again in the DCEU. Also, I'm curious as to what some of these wishes were. Like, what if there was someone with a very deadly and incurable illness that they wish to be rid of that, and then just agree to revoke their wish? Did Bruce Wayne wish for his parents to come back or anything? And if he did they come back in the bodies of some random people? I don't really have too much to say about the characters. I'll start with Diana. A pretty big question I have with her is that she's been using the Diana Prince name since 1918. And she's still using that name in 1984, and she looks the exact same. Does no one question this? And she seems pretty okay with sleeping with some random guy as long as his body's being possessed by Steve. Also, I haven't watched Batman v Superman in over 3 years, but didn't that movie say that she was kind of keeping a low profile since World War I? I guess they just ignore that. Also, Gal Gadot isn't really the greatest actress. Now let's talk about Barbara. This is the 4th, I think, time DC's gave us a villain like this. And unattractive, just frizzy hair and glasses. Nobody who people ignore, but then they get their powers and they become the villain. They did this with Catwoman, they did this with the Riddler, they did this with Poison Ivy. Marvel's even done this with the Electro. She wishes to be like Diana and then finds herself able to walk in heels. Then she becomes an 80s bad girl and then becomes a furry. And then there's Maxwell Lord. The only thing he really has going for him is that he has a son. And towards the end they bring up a backstory where he was abused by his father. And then he starts Black Gold as an adult. But it's brushed off like right after it's brought up. Then he realizes what he's done and makes up with his son who just shows up. First his son is on this like overpass or something, then he just shows up in front of him and then they make up. And the movie also shows that Max knew about the stone before the robbery, but they don't go anywhere with it. And why would he wish to be the stone? Why not just like keep it in his pocket with him? I thought I'd have more to say about Steve, but I mentioned him earlier and he doesn't really do much. Thought I'd have more to say about these characters, but I'm kind of drawing blanks here. I guess a couple other things I want to say before I end this are that when we got a Wonder Woman movie set in 1984, we wanted the fun things about the 80s, not this Cold War crap. And if that's supposed to be Reagan, then that's the worst Reagan I've ever seen. So yeah, Wonder Woman 1984 sucks and it's not good. Maybe it'll be better after watching the other 1,982 sequels, but I can't find them anywhere. So I'm going to give Wonder Woman 1984 a 4 out of 10. It's closer to a 3 than a 5. Sorry this took so long, but my next reviews will probably be on a more smaller scale than this. And I'm not sure what that will be yet since there's still some movies from last year I want to catch up on. So yeah, I'll see you later.